Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Woo! Hello there. Welcome. It's a Friday furnace. Although, again, if you look at the national weather map, we're actually one of the cooler spots. Unbelievable. So, it'll be a hot one. Hope you all have access to cool. Heaven knows. There are people who don't. I mean, there are people who don't. I know there's lots of people who don't. Even some who willingly don't. That's what freaks me out. I know some people who refuse to get air conditioning. You're out of your minds. Maybe this kind of weather will change your mind. I was watching, I guess, the local weather last night, and they said something about how even though we've had, 8 or 9 days above 90, this is nowhere near a record, that they're in 1988, I believe, 87 or 88, there was some unbelievable number of days, 30-some days above 90. And I remember that summer well, because I was working still as a television reporter. And back in those days, women television reporters I was wearing pantyhose. And, I had to look nice. And I remember being out in that unbelievable heat day after day after day after day and just literally wanting to die. I remember that horrible summer. The pantyhose summer. Jeez. And it's interesting, but now local reporters, women reporters, and I love this, actually are willing to and able to be on air, like in, especially in winter, dressed appropriately. That wasn't the case when I was, they didn't want us looking anything but attractive. And so you couldn't have like some stupid down parka on or something. It just wasn't done. You'd stand out there and freeze to death. And I remember the first time I saw some lovely woman reporter, local, in the dead of winter with some goofy hat on, but warm, with her obviously ruining her reporter hair and mittens or something. And I thought, well, thank God. Jeez. Because it just shows how old I am. My God. Well, hi, how you doing? I didn't sleep last night, so it could be that this show is going to be very meandering. The good news is I have a guest coming in who is extraordinarily articulate, Susan Hansen, and she has a book out called Religion and Reaction, and it is about the religious right and its impact, its power, and the countervailing force that has arisen, that would be folks like us. But more specifically, she zeroes in on what she calls the seculars. And we'll talk more, obviously, with her about that definition. As she defines it, I don't comfortably even fit into it. But I certainly, in a broader context, do. So we'll talk to her about it. The book says it is about the secular political challenge to the religious right. And, it's a heck of a challenge, as we all know. Okay, so we're going to be talking some about that. But I have you to myself for just a little while, and as long as I can maintain anything approaching coherence, I'll do that. There was a list and we've talked about this before, in the Wall Street Journal the other day about what jobs are the most secure jobs to have. In other words, what jobs can't be outsourced or done by robots. Because, we've seen so many good paying jobs go that way. It used to be that, it started with like the assembly line kind of jobs, good blue-collar jobs. And then it got into middle white-collar jobs, the outsourcing to India and to other Asian nations. And it's become quite clear that if you want a job that can't be taken away either by technology or by some foreigner somewhere who will undercut, you in terms of wages, that you need a job that provides a service that can only be provided by a real human being who is present. Can't be in India. And what those jobs invariably are, though, are somewhat skilled, but they're not high paying. So those are the secure jobs. The ones like personal trainer. There's a boom in people deciding they're going to be personal trainers. We only hope that they know what they're doing, because obviously you can hurt somebody if you don't know what you're doing and you pretend to be. And it's not licensed really yet in states. You can bet it will be. But then you get into those licensed trades. Those are the jobs. Hairdressers. Animal care workers, dog walkers, dog groomers. These are the kind of jobs you can bet will still be there. You can add to that more things like, obviously, plumbers and carpenters, but those are the jobs. Other than that, I don't know. Manicurists. Nursing home workers. Lifeguards. Hey, did you see the lifeguard I told you about yesterday was offered his job back because the entire world has risen up against this business that canned him, and he turned it down. I don't know. So those are the jobs that are available, and they don't pay a lot. They also are not 9 to 5, generally. They're jobs in which you, because it's a service job, have to be willing to work strange hours and have to be willing to, you have to work on weekends, you have to work evenings, you have to work when the person who wants your services is available. That's the way it's going to work. So it's a totally, different world. These are not high-paying jobs. So, but these are the jobs that it looks like will be secure. Wonderful, huh? Here's my favorite story of the day. Want to share it with you? God bless these Scandinavians. You know, they're more highly evolved. What is that with them? They were more highly evolved 600 years ago because, you know, it wasn't Columbus. It was Eric, you know, that found North America. They had ships back then. They were gutsy as hell. They were something. So anyway, this one's out of Sweden. The Swedish government has decided that, yes, prostitutes can claim benefits, including sick days. Honey, I have a headache. That's okay. That's okay. You still get paid. So this is the ruling of the director of the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. He said, as long as sex workers pay their taxes, they should have the same access to sick leave and parental leave as anybody else. We don't make moral judgments. Be still my heart. They don't make moral judgments. Yeah, well, in Sweden, prostitution is legal. What's interesting is that in Sweden, what is illegal is buying the services of a prostitute. So they've got it absolutely flip-flopped from the way we generally do it, right? We criminalize the women, and we generally leave the men alone. They do the opposite in Sweden. They say a woman's got to, you know, some women, this is what they got to do. If there's a market, fine. But if we catch the guy, he's going to face a fine or possible imprisonment. Seems a little odd, but it's less odd, I think, than our current arrangement. How about them Pirates? Hey, did Cleveland win last night? Check them out. Because we're either, I mean, we could be 2 games up. We're either 1 game up or 2. Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Reds. I mean, what am I talking about? I told you, I got no sleep. Cincinnati.
3-1.
Cincinnati won? Okay, so we're...
Cleveland won.
No, I don't care about Cleveland.
Oh, what do you
I mean, because I'm sleep deprived. Cincinnati.
Yes, okay.
Why would I care about Cleveland?
I don't know.
Okay, Cincinnati.
They lost.
Yes! All right.
2-1.
That's the right answer. So we're in first place, and they're 2 games back. I love it. So anyway, I'm going to the game tonight. How much of an idiot am I? I'm going to the game tonight, and I'm very worried about this game. This is going to be a game I don't know that we're going to win. We've been, playing such a hapless bunch of idiots from Houston for 4 days. I don't know if we're ready to play another good team. So we'll see. It's supposed to be 98 at game time. I'm an idiot. Unbelievably anger-inducing piece of information in the paper today. When the Corbett administration was crowing about, voter identification, the new law, which he so happily signed, he said then, and maintained it over and over again, that 99% of all the eligible voters in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania were already in receipt of a proper ID. So that this bill he signed was only going to impact a measly 1%. And the governor said that he and his buds had done the research, and that's what they discovered. Well, he should talk to his Department of State, because they announced today that a detailed analysis had found that only 91% of the names on voter registration rolls matched someone who also has a driver's license. And, in fact, you know how many registered voters in Allegheny County alone, right here, do not have a driver's license. Consequently, unless they've got a passport or work for the state and have a proper ID. I'm not sure all the IDs that pass muster. In Allegheny County, the new data that comes out of the Department of State shows that close to 100,000 registered voters in this county do not have a driver's license. Do you know, and a lot of them are old, they're going to go to the polls like they always do and think they're going to vote like they always have, and even the people at the polling place know who they are, and they're going to be turned away. It's just an outrage. Unbelievable. Republicans, they're such believers in the experiment of democratic government that is these United States of America. They are so in favor of enfranchisement. They are so always willing to bend over backwards to make voting easier for Americans, as opposed to putting barriers up in their way. And then you see something like this and you think, well, maybe it's a good idea if people can't get to the polls or can't vote, because most Americans apparently don't have the kind of information they may require in order to make a reasoned choice, in order to weigh what the candidates are all about and which fits their own sense of priorities, and then vote. The constant deluge of polls and information that tell us that Americans are not paying attention, that they don't have a clue, that if they have a clue, they're getting it from bumper stickers and, I don't know, a little blurb on a talk station that they hear, or something that a neighbor told them. So we all know that the health care ruling was such a big to-do, right? I mean, this was huge news, huge news. This is what we've been going back and forth politically about for the last 3 years. Okay, so people like us who sort of pay attention to what's going on are in such a minority. 45%, almost half of the Americans that were polled the day after the Supreme Court ruled on Obamacare, 45% didn't have a clue what the court had decided. And in fact, a third of those, when asked, thought that the court had in fact rejected Obamacare. So 45% of Americans did not know about what is truly the most highly publicized Supreme Court case since Bush v. Gore, since the case that decided the 2000 election. And that is pretty damn amazing. Dispiriting, disquieting, distressing. And if you look even closer at the numbers, among 18 to 29-year-olds, 43% did not know anything about the ruling. Another 20% thought the court had rejected it. So that's right there, 63%, two-thirds of young voters who didn't know anything, or else what they knew was totally false. So you wonder, when people go to vote, what it is that they're basing their vote on. If they don't know what's going on, if they don't know what people stand for, if you don't know what the issues are that can be, impacted hugely by your vote. Because this election, by the way people vote, people will be voting either to essentially agree with that Supreme Court ruling and wanting to move on, or trying to elect an administration that promises to dismantle it. How do people anyway, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And while UPMC disputes this, did you see this in the business section of the Post-Gazette today? Did you see this? This independent hospital review called Becker's Hospital Review, which comes out, I guess, annually, has made a list of the top grossing hospitals in the country. Which hospital in the country do you think is taking in the most money of any hospital in the United States of America? Duh. Yep, topping off the list, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Presby, Shady Side. I guess they sort of put them together. UPMC coming in at a gross of $10.19 billion. It's your average take for a nonprofit. $10.19 billion. UPMC says, "Oh, that's absolutely not right. That's absolutely not right." But I don't know. You would think that this group that does this for a living knows what they're doing. So, UPMC's made more money than any other hospital. Brought in more than any other hospital, followed by the Cleveland Clinic. And then after the Cleveland Clinic, it really starts to drop off. Third is New York Presbyterian Hospital. And then you get into all these biggie hospitals that, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in L.A., Stanford's California Hospital, in Philly, Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, Temple University's hospital in Philly. So 3 of the top 10 are in Pennsylvania. And we, UPMC, I genuflect toward their fortress on Grant. Number 1 in the nation, although they would rather not have the honor and dispute it. Unbelievable. Oh, and speaking of those that have, the rich guys, did you also see this the other day? Chesapeake Energy, they're the natural gas drillers. They're the, I think the second. Who's the first? I don't know, but they're the second largest American natural gas driller. They're the ones that have had some difficulty recently in regard to their CEO and founder. Listen to this. Chesapeake Energy, which has made $5.5 billion in profits in the last 2 decades, has paid in taxes 1%. That's its tax rate. 1%. What kind of an idiot country do we live in? Where the richest, the filthy, filthy, unbelievable rich are not asked to contribute. They're just given more and more. And then, so who has to pick up the slack? The people who aren't rich. Who came up with this idea? Rich people. This is insane. Here's why Chesapeake Energy and other U.S. oil and gas producers can thank a century-old rule that allows folks like them to postpone income taxes in recognition of the inherent risk they take in drilling their wells. Because, you know, their wells may turn out to be dry. Wait a minute. Am I being naive, or do I understand when I was taught about what capitalism was? Is that in capitalism, somebody called an entrepreneur takes a risk. Takes a risk, right? He has an idea, he's built something, whatever. He thinks he's got a great idea that's going to make money. He puts it out there, and if he's right, he makes a ton of money. And if he's wrong, he takes a hit. The way they've jerry-rigged the marketplace is that the big guys don't take risks anymore. Only little guys take risks. And we allow this. Oh, because they're the job creators. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Oh, God. Unbelievably stupid. And the propaganda they've put out absolutely has worked on tens of millions of Americans who've drunk that Kool-Aid. Here's the ridiculous thing about that. Since that law, which is like 100 years old, technology has changed a bit. And when these guys drill wells now, they know what's down there. They have a really good sense of what's down there. So the number of dry wells, the percentage of dry wells that these guys end up with is infinitesimal compared to where they do not need this deferral. So the billion gazillionaires pay 1%. What do you pay? Ah! Let's talk about bird poop. I know some of you might think I'm fixated on poop, but I'm not. It's just how, all of a sudden, everywhere I look, there's stories about poop. So, following up on our fecal transplant stuff. Now, the latest thing, and this was in the New York Times. Oh, yes. This applies to the ladies. You can now get a facial at a very fancy New York spa that essentially brushes nightengale poop on your face. Ah, yes, the poop of a nightingale. That's right. And actually, UV disinfected nightingale poop. It is airlifted from Japan because it's only Japanese nightingales, apparently, whose poop don't stink. It is then mixed with rice bran, and it is plopped onto the faces of willing women who shell out well over $100s to have nightingale poop put on their faces. And here's what one of the people who's selling this stuff says. People discovered that organic didn't always mean organic, or could be harmful to one's skin. And so they are moving on to naturally produced something. I can't see this. So there it is. They have gotten sort of sour on the botanical essences and instead have moved on to animal-based facials. Nightingale poop. It's supposed to make your skin radiant. Colette writes, my 80-year-old aunt did not have an acceptable ID to vote. She never learned to drive. First, I had to send for a raised seal birth certificate. To do that, I had to send 2 bills identifying her residence. She only had 2. The others were in her sister's name. So you can see that could be a problem for people. And then it took a month to get the birth certificate. Then, with that in hand, we went to the Department of Motor Vehicles and had to produce the same bills again, the birth certificate, and fill out a form and another form stating that the ID was for voting purposes. The last form gets you the ID for free. She has difficulty walking, which made it extra fun. That all took a bit more than an hour and an additional 45 minutes of travel. Without me, she never would have been able to do it. What are the elderly who are on their own supposed to do? Well, Colette, I think you've answered the question yourself. They're supposed to go to hell. And thus speaketh the governor and the legislature, Republican, of Pennsylvania. That's it. Go to hell. Hey, I got to take a break. And when we come back, we will have Susan Hansen with us, whose book is called Religion and Reaction, the Secular Political Challenge to the Religious Right.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Go to birdbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the Science Center, the History Museum, Carnegie Museums, and some of the best restaurants in Pittsburgh. During the month of July, spend $50 on Bird Bargains merchandise and receive a $10 gift certificate to Buca di Beppo. Birdbargains.com. Local deals, local merchants. Birdbargains.com.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it. But now your parents are becoming energy efficient. They could save hundreds of dollars a year and take you to the fair next year.
I want to go now.
I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Get Lynn Cullen live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
You in the City and Hosanna House Summer Nights present Jazz Under the Stars, starring Najee, Friday, July 13th. 8 p.m. at the Sherwood Event Center in Wilkinsburg. Tickets available at Dorsey's, Stediford's, or charge by phone at 1-800-383-5760. Najee, live in concert July 13th. Proceeds benefit Hosanna House, a place called Hope.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okie doke, welcome back. All right, enough of my blatherings. We've got somebody here who actually knows what she's talking about. Seriously, Susan Hansen is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. professor of political science and women's studies, also adjunct at the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. Her book, Religion and Reaction, The Secular Political Challenge to the Religious Right. Yeah. Well, there it is. My audience certainly has a sense of what this book must be about, because we talk about this stuff all the time. We bemoan the power of the religious right. We fear the religious right. We worry that our side doesn't seem up to the challenge that your title suggests. So let's just start us out by giving us a general overview, because you say that the religious right sort of comes out of a reaction to secular humanism, because they thought that, well, us hippie types and all of that, right, we're sending the country straight to hell, and that galvanized this otherwise a relatively quiet group and politically?
Well, I think what happened is that after the Stokes trial in 1925, when the evangelical anti-evolution view was thoroughly demonized in the national media, that most folks simply went underground and went back to church.
They decided politics is not for us.
Right. So they'll focus on saving souls, their own and others. But in some parts of the country, such as the South, they continued to have considerable influence over the schools, and you couldn't find anybody teaching evolution in the South for a good many years. But in the 1960s, after all the events, the sexual revolution, the Civil Rights Act, etc., they began to think that they needed to get back into the political system.
Because they didn't like the direction things were going.
No, and this was helped along, I think, by two factors. One was technology, the advent of direct mail televangelism, and now you could mobilize all these widely scattered little church groups. And the second was leadership. And you had a number of people who realized that these were the silent majority, the forgotten Americans who weren't demonstrating in the streets. But if they could be mobilized to vote, they would be likely to support conservatives. So I think that was really the start. And this got a huge push after the Roe versus Wade decision, where the money and clout and leadership of the Roman Catholic Church became very much invested in the fight against abortion, and this led to organizations and grassroots that really strengthened the whole process.
That's sort of somewhat strange bedfellows, is it not, the Catholic Church and evangelicals?
Oh, absolutely. And there have been lots of tensions within the religious right over leadership, over theology. Even Baptists don't agree with each other on what's a good Baptist. So this has not all been a smooth and simple strategy by any means. But the core argument of the book is that the folks that make up the religious right figured out ways to be politically effective, whether it was the presidency or winning school board elections or getting a ban on gay marriage on state ballots. So when they began to have a real effect on public policy, I think the American tolerance for religious diversity was very much challenged. And people were willing to live and let live. People could believe whatever they want. But when they started enacting this into law and getting court decisions and congressional actions and presidential appointments that reflected a particular worldview, then people who did not share these religious views felt that their values were challenged.
Okay, so I'm getting a pendulum sense.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Richard Hofstadter is a noted American historian, and he's argued that this has been going on for 3 or 4 centuries, that the pendulum swings too far to a liberal or conservative or Democratic or Republican direction, and most Americans are moderate and centrist and so on, and they do get upset when there is too much of an effort to impose other beliefs on them.
So your sense is has that pendulum started? Because my gosh, these religious folks still look like they've got an awful lot of power. The seculars, as you call them, though, are getting increasingly up in arms.
That's exactly what I'm arguing. And this has happened on several levels. First of all, seculars, who I define as people who never go to church and attach no importance to religion. Now, this is a...
See, but that takes me out. Then I don't fit as a secular.
You probably wouldn't. You'd probably be a moderate then.
Oh, my God, do you hear that? Do you hear that? And I can hear people saying, I knew she really wasn't one of us. She is too moderate. Because, no, I do identify with my religion. I don't go to services a lot, but I definitely identify, do all my almost all my volunteer work within that community. But I am so secular, it's ridiculous.
Well,
so you've got a very narrow definition then of secular.
Well, this is become pretty standard in political science and sociology, and even using this definition, you can document a very steady increase in the proportion of seculars over the past 30 years.
Okay, so
and they are now a very sizable proportion of the American
people
public.
Who are not in any way affiliated with a church or religious community,
and who don't think religion is very important.
Wow.
Those are the definitions. Now, many of these people do have religious beliefs. They may believe in God, they may believe in the afterlife. Lots of young folks believe in reincarnation, regardless of their religious background. But my argument, in part, is based on the logic of political organization. That if you're not affiliated with any sort of group,
how do we get to you?
How do you get mobilized?
But see, that's it. That's it. And I've said this before. The right is already organized. They're in their faith communities. They see each other every Sunday and sometimes 3 times a week. We, these damn secularists who don't, they're the ones who, go bowling alone.
But this is changing. This is what, and again, on 2 levels.
Where they congregate in bars? Where do we get to them?
Well, the internet is a huge factor.
Yeah.
Virtual communities, social media networks. And another level that's happening is that seculars are getting organized. And we've had a number of new organizations adding to the previous traditional ACLU and Ethical Culture Society and so on. There's a Secular Alliance that is an umbrella group of 20 different humanist and atheist and agnostic organizations. There's the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which has won some significant court cases. And these folks are putting a lot of money into these legal efforts. And when they do become motivated to try to mobilize people through the internet and through the Democratic Party, they have been increasingly successful.
Here's what worries me about, again, our side. We only seem to get excited and pay attention and work for national elections. The right, they get busy with school board elections, with legislative districts, and they consequently control most state legislatures.
I would have to disagree with that.
Oh, good.
And the 3 case studies in my book are all at the state and local level. And one is the Dover School Board case right here in Pennsylvania. And, of course, it was partly a legal battle, but what also happened is that the citizens of Dover were so disgusted when the evangelicals on the school board tried to foist intelligent design on them that they mobilized in a high turnout election and voted every single one of them out, even before the judge handed down his decision. So it is indeed possible. My other example was the defeat of an anti-abortion measure in South Dakota, not once but twice. Right. One of the most red states where the religious right is allegedly extremely powerful at the grassroots, and they lost decisively twice. So again, it is possible.
Yeah, but are you sure you're just not an optimist by nature? So you had to go through a whole lot of stuff before you found those three things where the seculars actually rose up.
I don't think that's the case. Intelligent design does not have legal standing in any district in the country.
But my understanding is science teachers all over the country are tiptoe around the teaching of evolution now.
According to a recent study by some Penn State professors, there's about, maybe a sixth of high school teachers who do not agree on evolution and don't touch it. But the vast majority are fighting back, and state laws mandate the teaching of evolution. It's the subject of testing for state exams, and some of my heroes are the science teachers in Dover, Pennsylvania, and every single one of them refused to read the statement the school board asked them to read. It had to be read by school administrators. So I think there certainly are some teachers who go along, but an awful lot of them are fighting.
How would you characterize the political environment of Dover? Are those folks generally Republican voters?
I think they're generally pretty conservative. This is a suburb of York. This certainly isn't either Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. But again, their values were challenged. They may have had support for religion and wanted more morality in the schools, but they didn't want the variety that was being pushed down their throats by these true believers.
Okay, so the true believers have maybe, they've been feeling very powerful, and maybe they've overreached, and that's why we're starting to get this pushback. But they own the Republican Party.
Again, I don't think so. It varies a great deal by states. They own the Republican Party in South Dakota. That didn't help. They still lost not one but two referenda. Republicans control the state legislature now in Harrisburg, and what's happened to that gay marriage ban has not yet emerged from committee, and a lot of them don't want to go anywhere near it. So they certainly have influence and money, but that doesn't mean control. There are other factors involved, other issues, other alliances, and in Pennsylvania, there's a large number of moderate Republican women in particular.
There are? I thought they were extinct.
No.
What? There's moderates?
Not at the polls. And they are supportive of reproductive rights. They favor gun control. They were part of Arlen Specter's constituency for years. And if you go too far right, they do mobilize. Pennsylvania is still a blue state at the presidential level. Now, the big fall-off is in midterm elections, because many of the seculars tend to be young, tend to be minorities. And I do have a section in the book that the 2010 election was a major pushback by the religious right and this huge number of abortion restrictions that have been promulgated in a number of states since. But again, they're not winning. Gay rights, gay marriage, the public has been supportive of this for a couple of years now. And if you look at the demographics, and this is part of my reason for optimism, that young people and minorities and well-educated people and supporters of reproductive rights and gay rights are a growing proportion of the population. So I think the religious right is very much on the defensive.
Ha ha!
Now,
Well, let me stop you there for a second. Oh, my God, before this is over, she's going to make me into an optimist. I can't believe it. Susan Hansen is my guest. She's got a really interesting book out, Religion and Reaction. As I was reading it, I was arguing with you all because, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I want you. I don't think, because my audience tends to be very, I think, down in the mouth about our power versus theirs. But it is true. Demographics are looking good. I got to take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, let's see if Susan Hansen can make us into optimists.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Vote now. Who will be the chosen one in Pittsburgh City Paper's annual Best of Readers poll and register to win a new iPad? Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vella wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vella usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvella@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
Pittsburgh City Paper is seeking 10 local artists who design their own street box for a public art project to be featured throughout the city of Pittsburgh. Go to pghcitypaper.com and click on the Art Box link for more details. The Pittsburgh City Paper Art Box Project, brought to you by McDonald's.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All right, I'm still arguing with her, but she keeps coming back. There are organizations. Okay. All right. Demographics. Okay, so on one of these little scribbled notes I wrote to myself, I said, does the Republican Party have a death wish? I mean, seriously, you look at demographics. You look at Hispanics. You look at young people. You look at America turning brown instead of white. You look at, the growing. Are they out of their minds, or are they so captive to their base that they can't make them turn? They've got to make.
I think that's a big part of it, and I have a couple of instances in the book where, for example, the president of the National Association of Evangelicals suggested a more moderate position on gay rights, and he got voted out. And both sides have found that fundraising appeals work much better if you say, the hordes are coming, the world is falling apart.
That's what they've always done.
And again, some group tried, a moderate balanced fundraising appeal, and it didn't bring any money.
No, you got to scare the bejeebers out of people for them to open their wallets.
Pressure. But what we are seeing is that seculars who used to be politically quiescent are voting in much larger numbers. They're much more active in campaigns. They're using the internet and social media to mobilize, and so there is the potential there. Now, again, off-year elections, that simply wasn't going to happen.
Well, one hopes that they learned something by seeing what happened in 2010. Although, I don't know. I despair.
Well, it's, what matters more, social issues or the economy. And so I think young people are really torn at this point because the economy is not helping them at all. So we'll see if they're going to bother voting at all.
Speaking of young people, evangelicals have young people. There's young people in that group.
Sure.
Or is that group getting, demographically older, or is there a generational split that you're seeing among evangelicals as well?
I think there is a generational split. Much of the old leadership is really aging out. Jerry Falwell is dead. Pat Robertson has stepped down. And I think there's a huge debate going on about how they are going to mobilize young people. And abortion and gay marriage are not the way to do it. So they're certainly looking at other kinds of issues and other coalitions. But that's going to take a while to evolve, because at the moment the young people still don't vote in large numbers. And the older people are the ones who vote and give money, and the base is still strong enough to keep things pushed in a much more conservative direction. Plus, I think the scariest thing, and the reason I'm not so optimistic, is that the religious right has been on a 20-year campaign to remake the judiciary.
And they're doing a hell of a job.
They certainly are. And states elect judges in, of course, low turnout, off-year elections.
That's right.
So they're very responsive to the mobilized.
And it's almost impossible to get people worked up about a judicial election.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Every time there's a presidential election and people would say, there's not a dime's worth of difference between the Republican and the Democrat, I always say, the Supreme Court! Think of the Supreme Court.
Well, this is something else that seculars are much more likely than religious traditionalists to be aware of party differences. They're younger, they're better educated, so I think these are more salient. It's going to take a while to translate this into votes and policy. But again, this is a huge change from 30 years ago, where in 1980, seculars voted for Ronald Reagan. And their turnout was much, much lower. But this, again, has changed. And that's what I'm trying to document.
Okay, you also, there's one little tidbit in your book that made me laugh out loud. Seculars, as it turns out, are know more about religion, right? They know more about religion.
Yes.
Than the evangelicals or than the religious folks.
Exactly.
They know more. Now, that's funny.
This came out of one of the Pew surveys, and they had a bunch of questions
about the Bible or whatever. Or what do Christians believe? And the secularists knew, but the Christians didn't.
Right.
Oh, for God's sake!
Right.
Well, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Okay, so here's the other thing. If I were a Republican, I'd be arguing, these Hispanics are made for us. They belong in the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. They're Catholic. They're conservative. They're traditionally family-oriented. They're everything. They're hardworking. All the values that we care about, they care about. We should be going after them. This is, again, why I say, are they out of their minds? I think Hispanics would fit more comfortably in the Republican Party.
I think as of maybe 2000, 2004, you were right. But I have a table in the book looking at the opinions of younger Hispanics and African Americans. Younger Hispanics are moving towards the national norms on every dimension I looked at.
So they're not going to be as conservative as their parents. They're going to be American.
And they're not going to be as religious, and they don't go to church as often. Mass attendance is down across the board. So they are not going to be this huge force.
Well, here again, African Americans, if I want to say, I mean, that has been also, there's a real conservative bent there, and church going being so important, and your graphs show that African American youth are not going to church.
No, they're not. They're not. And I think you're going to see a lot of change on the gay marriage issue among African Americans since Obama's very public shift on that. And clearly there's generational issues involved. But I think my prediction is that treating gays differently under federal law, the DOMA Act, gay marriage, that this is not going to be sustainable.
Clearly.
And the Lawrence decision, Scalia at the time in his dissent said this is going to lead to legalization of gay marriage. And I think on this he was absolutely
right. He was finally right about something.
And it may take a few years, but the courts are aware of trends in public opinion as well.
Tell me, Planned Parenthood is sort of the canary in the coal mine here, because they seem to be, I mean, you want to make a religious right person apoplectic, just say Planned Parenthood. I mean, my bus goes by Planned Parenthood every day they're out there with their aborted baby pictures and everything. And this concerted effort to demonize, to go after them, even Komen Race for the Cure, that kerfuffle, which the right-wingers lost.
Yes.
Big.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the local affiliate was very much at odds with the national on that exact issue.
Yep.
Well, I think the Planned Parenthood argument is clearly something that's being successfully used to mobilize. But I think under the Affordable Health Care Act, the whole point is moot, because contraception will now be covered. Prenatal care will now be covered.
Without copays.
Exactly. So Planned Parenthood and other grassroots organizations were the only option for many poor, young, single minority women. This is going to change. And the biggest thing that's going to happen, which I don't think a lot of people have realized yet, is that one of the consequences of Obamacare is that the U.S. abortion rate is going to plummet.
Explain.
Because at the moment, the U.S. has the highest abortion rate in the industrialized world. Now, I'm not talking about Russia or China, but compared to European countries. And if we had the same policies as the Netherlands, which includes health care, readily available contraceptive, comprehensive sex education, their abortion rate is a fraction of ours. And we could have easily 600,000 fewer abortions in this country if contraception and prenatal counseling and maternity care were available.
Well, you tell that to the Pope.
Even Catholics don't listen to the Pope.
I know,
on
that's
these
true.
issues.
They don't. Well, I don't know if you've made me an optimist, but wow. Guys, we got our work cut out for it. We got to organize.
Oh, yeah. And vote. Right.
And vote, and grab all those young ones that are the future, and hit them upside the head, please. They got to come back out.
And I think political donations to judicial candidates,
here.
That hasn't been on a lot of people's radar, but that has got to happen, and really try to reverse the very sharp inroads the religious right has made in the courts.
Yeah, they've taken over, one of the branches. It's really an important one.
Well, again, varies a lot by state, and even in California, Proposition 8 was was struck down.
Right.
So.
See, she's a professor, and she doesn't like my generalizations that are make fast. I make fast and loose with the facts, but then I'm a radio talk show host.
Well, that's perfectly all right. Right. And you can find examples on both sides.
Sure you can.
But the plural of anecdote is data. And I think what I've tried to do is document some real trends.
Where can people get your book if they want to? I mean, it really is. It lays it all out.
It's available online through Amazon.
Amazon.com.
That's probably the best way to do it. University of Pittsburgh bookstore. It's not a mass market book. I don't think you're going to find it.
No.
But Barnes & Noble, I'm sure, could order it.
Okay, Religion and Reaction, Susan B. Hansen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gee, how is that for a change? Information and facts. You guys have a great weekend. Stay out of the heat. Don't, like me, go like an idiot and sit at the Pirate game tonight. Go Buccos! Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.